Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
A whole bunch of people sent me a story out of Wisconsin. And we've talked before about price gouging, the idea that if you've got something that's in hot demand because of let's say a crisis, let's say a hurricane went through town, and you're the only person in town who's got bags of ice, you might be tempted to jack the price up on those bags of ice because you can. And there's an argument about whether or not that should be illegal or not, but many states have got laws against price gouging. However, the opposite is also true. You can get in trouble for selling stuff too cheaply. Case in point, gas stations suing Woodman's for its cheap prices. So there's a chain of stores in Wisconsin called Woodman's, and it's a large store. They sell groceries and whatnot. They also sell gasoline. And so two gas stations in Waukesha are suing Woodman's for, they say, illegally outpricing them. They are selling their gas too cheaply. Make them stop. WISN ABC 12 reports the story. Caroline Reinwald wrote it. Two gas stations are suing Woodman's for selling gas too cheaply. Companies operating the Shell station on Main Street and the BP on Lincoln Avenue are suing Woodman's for damages of $80,000 apiece. Based on the number of days they said that Woodman's was illegally outpricing them. WISN got a hold of the court documents, more than 200 pages worth, and the companies are suing under Wisconsin's Unfair Sales Act, which prohibits selling goods below cost. It is illegal in most cases to sell goods below the cost for which they were acquired by the vendor in most cases. However, in newly filed documents, Woodman's argues it can sell below cost in order to keep up with Costco, which is 6.5 miles away, which apparently is doing the same thing, and that is selling gas really, really cheaply. WISN 12 saw lines of cars waiting to fuel up at Woodman's compared to very few cars at the other two stations. So people will apparently go where the gas is cheapest. Each of the customers interviewed said they fuel up at Woodman's because it has the lowest gas prices around. Attorneys for two gas companies who were asked for comment did not do so as of Friday, but in a statement, Woodman's legal team said, Woodman's is in full compliance with its Waukesha store gas pricing and believes this lawsuit is without merit. Now, that's the entire story. But there's a law they're talking about. What is this law that makes it illegal to sell something too cheaply? And you might wonder, wait, why on earth would there be such a law? Is there actually a situation where it would be wrong to sell stuff to consumers too cheaply, for too low of a price? And the answer is yes, but you have to get into some hypotheticals to understand it. But some of the hypotheticals do happen in real life. But let's suppose there's two companies making a product. Okay, two companies, just A and B, two companies making a product. And A is really, really well funded. They've got tons of money from some other business they've got going or from investors or whatever it might be. And B is not. Let's say that B is a mom and pop type operation. It's run by a couple people. They might even be mom and pop. And they are just simply putting the money they make from the business back into the business, but they don't have a ton of cash flow. Company A can take their products and dump them on the market below cost, losing money, but doing it to gain market share, because if they do that long enough, they can drive Company B out of business. And once Company B goes out of business, then Company A can raise their prices because they've got market domination. So that's the thinking behind this. Now, whether that would happen with gas stations in Wisconsin, I don't know, but I looked the law up, and here's what the law says. The policy of the law is the practice of selling certain items of merchandise below cost in order to attract patronage is generally a form of deceptive advertising and an unfair method of competition in commerce. Well, I disagree with the first half of that because they say it is an unfair form of deceptive advertising. And what is being advertised wrongly there? If I tell you I'm going to sell you the gas at 98 cents a gallon and I sell it to you for 98 cents a gallon, by definition, that is not deceptive. In fact, that is perfectly honest with respect to what I'm telling you. Now, whether it is an unfair method of competition, I would agree with that as a possibility, like I said. Such practice causes commercial dislocations, misleads the consumer, works back against the farmer, directly burdens and obstructs commerce, and diverts business from dealers who maintain a fair price policy. So Wisconsin's legislators have said there is such a thing as a fair price. It is neither too high, because that'd be price gouging, nor too low, because that would be an unfair practice. Bankruptcies among merchants who fail because of the competition of those who use such methods result in unemployment, disruption of leases, and non-payment of taxes and loans, and contribute to an inevitable train of undesirable consequences, including economic depression. And it's kind of like you could have got bitten by a snake. I mean, the fact that some company is selling products below cost, I don't know that necessarily leads to economic ruin, but that is the stated purpose of the statute. So the statute, many states do this. When they put out a statute, they actually put at the beginning what the purpose of the statute is. And they do that for a couple of reasons, one of which is so when the courts go to interpret the statutes, they go, what was the intent here? Oh, the intent is actually described right here. They're trying to avoid economic depression. So they can do that. So there's two sections here that matter, one of which is what describes the illegality of a loss leader. And a loss leader is a nickname in commerce for something that someone sells, which they will lose money on in the hopes of making up for it in some other way. So as you can imagine, a store might have a sale on some item where they'll sell it really, really cheaply, hoping that when you come in, you're going to buy other stuff there, or perhaps just go, I like this place. I'm going to come back here more often. And a lot of businesses run specials, especially when they open up. And they'll say, grand opening. Come on in, everything is, 50% off. And they want you to come in and go, oh, okay, this is a cool place. I'll come back here. So illegality of loss leaders. Any sale of any item of merchandise, either by a retailer, wholesaler of motor vehicles, fuel, or refiner, at less than cost, as defined in this section, and trust me, this is a section defining cost, with the intent or effect of inducing purchase of other merchandise or of unfairly diverting trade from a competitor, impairs and prevents fair competition, injures public welfare, and is unfair competition and contrary to public policy and the policy of this section, such sales are prohibited. Such sales are prohibited. Now, the interesting thing about that last sentence is it actually said if it's done with the intent of inducing a purchase, it's bad. But if it's done with the effect, meaning that the intent is not even necessary, with the intent or effect of inducing the purchase. So such sales are prohibited. Evidence of any sale of any item of merchandise by any retailer, wholesaler of motor vehicle fuel, or refiner at less than cost, as defined in the section, shall be prima facie evidence of intent or effect to induce the purchase of other merchandise, or to unfairly divert trade from a competitor, or to otherwise injure a competitor. So it is presumed if you're selling gasoline below cost, you're doing it to be unfair in competition or to hurt your competitors in Wisconsin. That's the law. The law says that. So you can argue about whether it's right or not. I'm simply pointing out that's the law. And whether it's right or not is actually, I think, not a moral question. I think it is actually simply a philosophical one. Because I know people out there also say that you'd point out that price gouging may or may not actually have a negative impact on a marketplace. For instance, let's go back to the example of the hurricane that hits a town and there's one store selling ice. They're the only store in town that's got ice. Bags of ice. Before the storm hit, the bags of ice are $1 a piece. After the storm hits, they're $10 a piece. Price gouging, right? People line up all day long to buy the ice at $10 a bag. So what happens is the community one county over that was not hit by a hurricane will have stores that have ice. And when people hear that ice is selling for $10 a bag over there, guess what's going to happen? People over here are going to get truckloads of the stuff, bring it over here and sell it. Well, you can't sell it for $10 a bag because somebody's already doing that. So to get the business, you'll sell yours for $9. Still a good profit. You bought it for $1 a bag, you're selling it for $9. You're making $8 a bag. Until somebody 2 counties over here is, hey, they're selling ice over there $8, $9, $10 a bag. You get a truckload of it, bring it on over, sell yours for $7 a bag. And eventually, the marketplace will correct. And I can think of countless examples where something came on the market, had a monstrous price at the front end, and then other people dove into the market and brought the price down. And so the question simply is, are you required to sell at a fair price when you can make more, knowing that if you sold for more, competitors will come in and force you to bring your price down? And so a lot of times legislators are trying to regulate the market through legislation. And what happens in many of these situations is it simply develops a black market, meaning that someone's going to say you are not allowed to sell your ice for $10 a bag. Cannot do it. It's illegal if you do it. Someone's going to come by and do it because they can find buyers. But they're going to do it off the books, not pay taxes on it, things of that nature. And in a roundabout way, that's worse. Because if I brought my ice in and sold it for $10 a bag and charged tax and paid the tax to the state makes some money. They make it off the retail price, which is $10 a bag. But, like I said, it's more of a philosophical question than anything else. So it is illegal to have a loss leader. Here's the real interesting point, though. If this happens in Wisconsin, the state can come after you. The state can come after you and say, we think you're doing something wrong here, and they can sue you for it. Likewise, any person who is injured or threatened with injury as a result of a sale or purchase of motor vehicle fuel in violation of that subsection may bring an action against the person who violated that subsection for temporary or permanent injunctive relief, or an action against the person for 3 times the amount of any monetary loss sustained, or an amount equal to $2,000, whichever is greater, multiplied by each day of continued violation, together with costs, including accounting fees and reasonable attorney fees, notwithstanding some other stuff. An action under this subsection may not be brought after 180 days after the date of violation. So if you are a competitor of someone who's dumping products in the market in Wisconsin, and they're selling them below cost, which is illegal according to the other section, as noted because they have the intention of avoiding economic depression, then you can sue them, and it's up to $2,000 a day, or your actual harm, if you want to calculate amount, if it's greater. But some people just say, no, I'll take $2,000 a day for how many days they did this. So it's $2,000 a day plus attorney fees and court costs if you were so harmed. So it's going to boil down to whether or not they were selling gasoline for the price that was too low according to the definitions. And that is the section I'm not going to get into. I read it, and it gave me a headache as I looked at it. So just trust me, they've got a formula where they explain what constitutes a fair price for gasoline. And so it's a strange situation. I've never heard of this sort of thing playing out like this. I've seen the state go in and whack somebody for price gouging. I've seen that many times. That comes up a lot. But when it comes to a business suing another business for unfair trade practices, particularly pricing and the dumping of product into a market, you usually hear about that on a national level. There was some noise being made a couple decades ago about electronics being brought into our country from another country. And the allegation was that the other country was funding the operation in the hopes of doing harm to the U.S. electronics industry. And some people believe that it happened. And if it did, well, look around right now as to how many, television manufacturers there are in the U.S. versus TV manufacturers outside of the U.S. So that is one case study you could take a look at. But yeah, this is a fascinating story out of Wisconsin. So Brad, AJ, Alan, Brian, Tom, Andrew, Dan, and Chris all sent it from WISN ABC 12 out of Wisconsin. Caroline Reinwald wrote it. Gas stations are suing Woodman's for its cheap prices. You can do that in Wisconsin. Questions or comments, put them below. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Kindness is universal. Sometimes being kind allows others to see the goodness in humanity through you. Always be kinder than necessary.